We're covering building a six-figure land business in 2023. If you're already over six figures, you might still take something away from today. I will say this is mainly geared for folks that are just getting started, but there's still going to be a few nuggets that you'll glean. And again, we'll be going through Q&A, so it'll be worth your while. But this is for folks that are, first day, like Craig said, 3 months, 6 months, even 12 months in. If you've yet to eclipse the six-figure mark, what we're going to share here today is going to be not only relevant, but hyper tactical. First off, let's just talk about who am I? My name is Sumner Healey. I was born and raised in Big Sur, California. I always tell people I was an entrepreneur from birth. I really had no choice in the matter. It's just how I was born. Fortunate enough to stumble into the land business in 2019. I've done, I think it's close to 500 deals at this point, but we'll call it 450 deals since then. Coached over 100 land investors in the last 12 months. Many have hit six figures in their first year, and some are on track for seven figures year two. So this year, currently I live in Las Vegas, spend my days maniacally focused on educating land investors that they are land CEOs. This business has little to do with being an investor and everything to do with being a business owner. And I think there's a huge disconnect in the land world, the education world. A lot of folks in the land space are first-time entrepreneurs, right? And so the business side can be a little bit daunting. And that's really the problem that I'm looking to solve. Here's a very unrelated picture of me running on the beach in the Philippines, looking very cool. The actual cool part was that while I was there, I was gone for exactly 14 days overseas, and my land business was still cranking out deals. We were still doing a couple of deals a week, both on the acquisition side, disposition side. And I think after talking to a couple hundred land investors in the last year, one of the things that I've heard as a commonality is like money is the route to get to time freedom. But it seems like really at the end of the day, what everyone's optimizing for is this, to be running on a beach and have your business run in the background. And I know that sounds like hyperbole, some mumbo jumbo. Is that even possible? It certainly is, and land's a really good vehicle to do it. And so that's, I think, what we're all shooting for here. That's really what I hope to share today. Not just how to make six figures, but how do we actually make six figures in a way that's actually enjoyable and doesn't take more of our time, and instead it should add to our life and enrich our life. I've done it both ways, right? I've built a land business where I was doing absolutely everything. I've done it the opposite way, and I will tell you the second way is a whole lot more exciting. Before we dive into it, I've got two questions for you guys. So first off, in the chat, if you guys can share, what is your financial goal for 2023, just as it pertains to the land business? Throw it in the chat, and I got the chat pulled up here. Just so I can get some context on what you guys are shooting for. So Brian, 100K, even, that's a fan favorite. Miran says 350K, 175K, 350K, 150, 250. So all in the mid six-figure range. And kudos to the folks that shared for actually knowing what you guys are shooting for, right? One of the things that we're going to start with here first is understanding, okay, what's our North Star, and why is that our North Star? So the second thing I want us to put in the chat is, if you achieve this, how would it impact your life, right? How did you get to that number? Was it just because it's a cool round number, like $100,000? Or is there a real rhyme or reason? Is that the number that gets you out of the job? Is that the number where you can no longer have to send your kids to daycare, or whatever the impetus is behind it? Let me know. And I'm going to share mine with you guys after. So this will be vulnerability for vulnerability. We'll both kind of take a turn here. More time with family, says Dan. To get out of the roofing company, travel, help my family financially, and also with knowledge. Cool. And if you guys are like, Sumner, I actually have no idea what I'm shooting for, what my North Star is, I really encourage to spend some time to do it. And these are like these soft and tangible things that I used to discount, that looking back, I'm like, no. The line in the sand for me was once I got clarity. So let's talk about what that was for me. Yep. So first off, before we dive into strategy, we must get clear on our why. The truth is, there's going to be bumps and bruises along your journey. There's no way around it. I don't care if you're doing this on your own, if you're in a coaching program, no matter how you slice and dice it, shit's going to get tough. There's just no way around it. It's the reality, right? And so the why is kind of the anchor that we hold on to. Having clarity around that will determine the strength of your commitment and the strength of your resolve. Right. And I always tell people, if you're in the land business long enough and you do the right things long enough, it's a surefire way to be successful. And so for a lot of us, it's just about staying in the game, even when things get tough. And I can tell you, it will get tough. It does happen. So I'll share a little bit about my why and what changed once I got clear on it. So I started my land business. I've actually never shared this publicly, by the way, but I started my land business when I was 24. I had previously started and ran a handful of different businesses, and they ranged from complete failures to mild successes. And as a kid, frankly, I was an odd kid, right? Like I grew up in Big Sur. I lived in a 250 square foot log cabin. I didn't really socialize much. I spent my days not wearing shoes in the woods. I got moved into town when I was in kindergarten. Started kindergarten. I couldn't spell my name. I couldn't draw a straight line. I couldn't cut a circle on a piece of paper. Like I had all these weird little things, and part of it is probably just how I was raised. But the teachers thought I had learning disabilities. I got held back. There was a whole story around that. And growing up, I never had skills or hobbies like a lot of the other kids, right? Like I wasn't a good baseball player. I wasn't an artist. I didn't play an instrument. And so the one thing that I felt like I could be good at was entrepreneurship. And at 24 years old, my track record was nothing but striking out, right? So the one skill, the one thing that maybe I could define myself with, I hadn't even done anything impressive with that. And so at 24 years old, I said, God damn it, this is where it ends. Like this is the line in the sand. And it created a ton of pain that honestly, I was just in a place of pain, quite frankly. And I heard it from my family. I heard it from my peers constantly about what I was doing or how silly it was. And a lot of folks in like my family thought, oh, you're just motivated by money. It's like, no, actually, I don't really give a shit about money. Honestly, at the end of the day, this is my art. This is my skill. This is what I do. And so I wanted to perform at a high level. And I just happened to select land as the vehicle to do it. It could have been any other business selling any other widget. This just so happened to be the vehicle that I selected. And so there was a line in the sand where I said, no more. I'm going to give this my all. And I certainly did. And so for me, my why was my respect for myself. My why was doing it for what I called little Sumner, making my younger self proud. And so your why doesn't have to be this big, grandiose thing. It doesn't have to be this worldly, godly mission. It's just whatever's relevant to you, right? And just having clarity around that. When I look back, that was such a catalyst for just substantial growth. And I would be lying if I said my journey in the land business has been just peaches and roses. There's been many, many bumps along the way. And I think understanding this has given me a level of commitment that's just been unshakable. All right, enough of the soft, mushy stuff. Let's talk strategy. Time versus money. So in the next section, we're going to cover the tools needed to build a six-figure land business. It's the very first thing we're going to talk about. There's really no way around it. There's some tools you're going to need to make this business run. One of the things that we're going to talk about, though, is the relationship between time and money, right? There are some tools which are certainly a non-negotiable. On the flip side, there are other tools that you can sidestep if you're on a budget. If that's the case, please understand that the more time and effort will be required on your part. If we're sidestepping some of those tools, which are really just going to buy back time, you're going to have to be the one to do them yourself. And I think that a lot of people, there's two schools of thoughts, right? Some people think you need oodles and oodles of money to build this business. I don't think that's true. Some people think they can go and handwrite the letters to owners and do it with no money. I also don't think that's true. We'll kind of talk about what I think the right budget is to start this business. Contrary to popular belief, you can start this business on a budget. Will it be time consuming? Yes. Will it be more difficult? Most likely. Is it possible? 100%. So how small is too small? What I've seen is about $10,000. That's kind of the line in the sand for a starting budget. I'll kind of talk about how you might utilize that capital. I started with less. I started with about $7,000. I've seen people start with less. You just got to be so scrappy, so freaking scrappy. And so if you have the dry powder, the capital, whatever it may be, if you've got more than $10,000, it will definitely be in your best interest, right? Especially if you've got other obligations like a job. More money will make this a lot easier to run while you have other obligations. For me, I had little money and I didn't actually have that much time. So I just worked like a dog to get it done. But I think $10,000 is a pretty safe bet. So if you're just starting with 10 grand or 100 grand, I think the way that you divvy up that capital should be pretty much unchanged. So the way I would divide that is marketing, software, so tools, and eventually hiring. And one of the things you might be saying, but Sumner, what about funding deals? I don't think really you should be funding your deals, whether you're just getting started or if you've been in this game for a long time. Now, are there different avenues to fund your deals depending on where you're at in this business? Certainly, and we'll touch on that here today. But the cash flow cycles become disgusting if you're funding your own deals. It'll be almost impossible to scale this business. And so marketing, software, hiring. And what I found is about $10,000 will allow you to have a run rate of about 3 to 4 months to market consistently. And if you're following the right playbook, you should get your first deal somewhere like that 60 to 120 day window. I've seen people do it a little bit faster. but I've seen most people shake out at about 3 months. And that's kind of the average that we expect for folks inside the LEAD program. Let's talk about the tools of the trade. So the must-have tools for building a six-figure land business: Data Tree, Follow Up Boss or Pebble, Rocket Print and Mail. The nice-to-haves: Pat Live, MapRight, Sign Now. Okay, 6 tools all in all. You could really get away with 3. Now, I might be saying, but Sumner, there's cheaper data providers, or there's this other mail house or what have you. So if we look at the needs to haves, Data Tree, in my opinion, I've used a lot of different data providers. Data Tree is a little more expensive than some of the other ones, but the quality of the data is unquestionable. It is bar none the best. And if we're going to go spend 50 cents, 52 cents per piece of data on marketing for a letter, it better be the most up-to-date, relevant, accurate data. So I see people skimping on the data because it's cheap and then mailing it and wondering why the results are sour and they're just not getting good yield from their mailers. Well, it all starts with the data, right? Not only is Data Tree a data provider, it's also kind of the back end of our due diligence, comping, mapping. It does a lot for us. So it's really just like the bedrock of our business. Follow Up Boss or Pebble, take your pick, take your flavor. They all do roughly the same thing. I think for me, the criteria for a good CRM is, can we grow with this? What you don't want to do is start with a CRM today and 2 years later, make that transition. It's hellish. I've seen people do it. You don't want to do it. So find one that will scale with your business. What do we look for in a CRM that will scale? Communication tools that are embedded, so we can do all of our communicating out of that CRM. When it comes to tracking team KPIs around communication, becomes just a whole lot easier. And the record keeping side of things, in terms of keeping records for sellers and buyers, is a lot cleaner. Both of those get roughly the same job done. Pebble used to not have that feature. They've just recently added it in. Rocket Print and Mail, I think you'd be hard pressed to find any cheaper mail company that also understands our business, right? They work with a lot of land investors. I think the only way you could get cheaper than 50 cents or 52 cents is if you have an industrial printer and you're printing at home, but you're going to need employees and a lot of money for infrastructure to make that happen. Okay, I just went backwards, sorry guys. I'm going to share this with you guys at the end. You guys will see discounts for all of this except Follow Up Boss. They won't give us a discount, but you guys will see all the tools there. And we'll share this presentation with you guys at the end. Okay, so let's talk about selecting the right vehicle. There are 1,000,001 different ways to make money in the land business, and that's super exciting. I love learning about different avenues, and I'm always shocked when someone's doing something that I've never thought of, but I never think about necessarily, in most cases, ooh, I'm going to implement that into my business, right? I think the best thing that we need to do is we need to figure out what's the right vehicle for us in terms of lifestyle, in terms of how far we want to scale this business, and staying maniacally focused on one strategy. Right? I've been doing one thing for a long time. The people that I see that get the farthest really do that. And that's true in like almost all arenas, but in particular with land. It's really easy to get shiny object syndrome and do a little bit of entitling, and a little bit of subdividing, and some small dollar owner finance deals and some wholesaling. If you are building a team and you're trying to build a land conveyor belt that streamlines your operations, like buys back your time, it'll almost be impossible to systematize that. Eventually you can stack on other strategies, but when you're first starting out, find one vehicle and stay maniacally focused on that strategy. My advice to you is find either a business or a land. I like to call them land entrepreneurs. I think land investor, I like land entrepreneur more. Find a land entrepreneur you want to emulate, right? Do exactly as they do. There's no shame in just creating a carbon copy of someone else's business. Eventually you'll iterate, you'll put your own flavor on it. But in the beginning, first 12 to 24 months, no need to try to be cute. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here, right? All we need to do is emulate, but ensure that the person that you're looking up to, that you are emulating, is in the spot that you want to be in, both in terms of the size of the business, but maybe more importantly, the lifestyle, right? And there's some businesses that are in the land space that can be high volume, high friction, very stressful. And there's also the flip side of that can be very low volume, low impact, and a lot less stress. And really that's nowadays what I'm optimizing for. You know, when I first started my business, I was a volume guy doing 250 plus deals a year. And it was crazy. It was a nightmare. And I look back and I'm like, why was I ever doing that? I just didn't know better. And now this year we'll probably do 60 deals. That's a lot more my pace. But revenue continues to grow. So it all works out. So I'm going to show you guys just a kind of our land ideology in a nutshell. If you zoomed out and went the 30,000 foot view, really the LEA model is take our land investing approach and then build a business around it, right? Who to hire, how to hire them, how to retain them, how to build the systems around that land strategy. Because I always tell people, land investing is really more of a skill set. You develop the skill, but you don't want to live in the skill arena forever. You want to go and build a business around that skill. But if we zoom in and look at the LEA kind of skill side of things for land investing, this is roughly our approach in a nutshell. We use demand as a filter to find what we call the best markets. We go after rural recreational and rural infill. I just find them to be much sturdier assets, right? They can weather a bad economy, I think, a lot better than infill lots. I also just find infill lots extremely boring. So it's just really not my style. We go after the middle of the market in terms of price point. So in my opinion, this gives us enough spread for outside capital. And what we found is this has the highest concentration of cash buyers. And really, for the model that we take, maybe a third of our deals are owner financing, and that's just by virtue of we couldn't really move it for cash. But back in the day, I was owner finance everything. Nowadays, it's give me cash, let the land business be a cash flow machine, and then go allocate that capital to something that's got real tax benefits, like long-term real estate. Right? There's no depreciation on land, so you don't get the tax incentives that you might get with traditional real estate. So I'm not really looking at land to be my cash flow from a cash flow perspective from owner financing, although we will take it, and you can always sell those notes if you want more capital in your business. I more would rather get long-term cash flow from other assets. So that middle of the market, we're big enough to where we can bring in outside capital, try to go pitch an investor on JVing on a $2,000 deal that you sell for $4,000. No one's going to want to do it, right? You find a deal that you're selling for, buying for 40, selling for 80 or 90, becomes a lot more attractive to all sorts of different people, right? All sorts of different avenues of funding. And then at the same time, we just have more cash buyers for that stuff. We focus on deal velocity over ROI. So that typically means we're selling 10 to 15 points beneath most retail listings. One of the interesting things is, and we'll talk about this later today, during COVID, I think a lot of land investors got jaded because they could sell their properties at retail, right? Everyone is selling at 95%, 100% of value because there was so much demand in the market, unlike anything we've ever seen before. What a lot of folks have failed to realize as we've come out of that cycle is land is an incredibly liquid asset. So we always have to be incrementally lower in most cases, unless there's just no supply out there, to get the thing to move. And so we're really focused on turn times over ROI. I think if you go and just do a simple Excel spreadsheet and do a calculation, you'll see your business will compound a lot faster with the velocity of your capital always trying to maximize the ROI. What did I just do here? Whoops. I still don't know how to work this presentation. Okay, let's talk about time allocation. So this is kind of an unfortunate truth for new land investors, but it's something that we all need to be aware of. As a new land investor, almost all of your results will have a one-to-one correlation with your input and effort, right? So what I mean by that? Well, the output is going to be derived almost solely from your input. So how you allocate your time is one of the largest drivers of your progress. As you begin to build systems and teams, you'll begin to disconnect from this one-to-one input correlation. This is called building leverage, right? This is like nowadays, I just think about this all day long. How can I get an incredible amount of output for minimal input? I'm just always thinking about things in terms of leverage. You don't really have that luxury when you're first starting. Yes, there is some leverage to what we do, direct mail, all that stuff. Like there is leverage built in. We're not handwriting every letter or cold calling every person, but for the most part, how you spend your time and allocating it correctly is the difference of hitting six figures in a year or not, right? And so let's talk about how I think you should be spending your time as a new land investor. Okay, broke this down to 365 days. That's what we're shooting for here, six figures in a year. And first off, these are my beliefs, right? And I'm sure maybe I missed something or maybe someone has other beliefs, and we can talk about this at the end of the Q&A if you guys have any feedback on this. This is Sumner's view, and I feel like I've got a pretty good sample size to back this up. 0 to 90 days. This is how you allocate your time. Market research, documenting and tracking your findings from your market research. Pricing offers, setting up your CRM and backend systems, education. 90 to 180 days. Market research, pricing offers, acquisitions. 180 to 365 days. Market research, pricing offers, acquisitions, recruiting. Right? This is the framework. I see so many new LEA members who come in the first 90 days, 120 days, they're on every single call. They don't miss a beat. And then as they start scaling up and they're getting deals coming in and they're building a pipeline, they start going through all of this, right? I also see there's some folks that are forever stuck in this education analysis paralysis, right? One of the things that I drill home to our members is what we call learn, implement, coach. Right? Learn the thing, implement it, get coached on the work that you put forth. And so that's why we have education in that 90-day bracket. Now, sure, people come back 180 days or 300 days later and they need help with an X, Y, and Z problem. We work through it. But for the most part, the 90 days is like just learn all the stuff, like glom onto it, implement. And you can either get coached inside of a program by a coach, or you can get coached by the market, right? We always look at learning things in terms of feedback loops. The market has a longer feedback loop. Send a mailer, in 3 months, you'll know if you did a good job or not. Draft a mailer, price your mailer, have someone review it, you'll know in 3 hours. But either way, that's going to tell you what steps you need to take next and how you need to iterate in your business. So yeah, that's the breakdown. Yes, don't see dispositions on here because quite frankly, I think if we're doing all this stuff right, dispositions should flow pretty effortlessly. I used to have this weird belief that dispositions was everything in the land business. And so it's because I wasn't doing anything on the acquisition side or marketing side, right? So I would buy any old property because it was easy to buy, and then I would have to go shove it down someone's throat to try to sell it. That's a really difficult business to be in. This is much easier. Pick the right markets, acquire the right deals, price them correctly, and the disposition should flow pretty easily from there. All right, quick poll of the group. Who wants to see KPIs of a six-figure land business? You guys put it in the chat. I'm gonna take a swig of water while I do that. So throw it out there. Do you guys want to see the KPIs? Emilio says he does. Erica, definitely. All right, yes, sir. All right, I'm gonna take a swig of water. Peter says, yes, please. What a gentleman and a scholar. All right, so I need a preface. These KPIs are kind of following our playbook, following our approach. If you're doing a totally different model, you're saying, Sumner, I'm going to go buy desert squares and wholesale them to other land investors, KPIs are going to look wildly different. So this is really just kind of in the same vein of the Leah model that we were talking about earlier. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys what we do. And these are numbers that we've pulled from the group. So these are statistically relevant. And I've actually added a bit of a buffer. And I'll kind of talk about where I added that buffer. So first off, as a minimum, when we look at average profit, right? I think this always trips people up. When we look at average profit for folks inside our community, the mid bracket is about $15,000 gross profit on average. The highest that I see consistently is like 20 to 22,000 gross profit. Now, does that mean that all of our deals are in that wheelhouse? No. Once a quarter or a couple times a year or once a year, you have a big old deal you make 100K on, 150K on. But the most of the stuff that we do is really just built off of base hits, right? Now there is kind of an inverse relationship between the number of mailers you need to send to get a deal and your average gross profit. So we recently took a poll inside the community for another project that we're working on how many mailers people send to get a deal and how much money they make for every mailer they send. So the best that I saw in our group was $7 of gross profit for every letter that's sent. So 52 cents for the letter makes $7. That's the best that I saw. And they're getting, I think it was a deal every 1,900 letters. I'm at 1,700 letters, but my gross profit's a little bit lower. And so you'll see that there's some guys that are at 2,200 letters, but they're at $2,000 or $20,000 gross per deal. So you gotta understand there's a bit of an inverse relationship there. As a generalization, our deals will be selling around 25 to 35K. If I want to make 15K gross, there's two different ways I can skin that cat. I can go and try to buy a deal at 5,000 and I sell at 20,000, might be a little bit harder. Or I can go after deals that are at $30,000 and offer them half of what it's worth. I'm going to get a lot more people calling back on our letters, right? We're not in the business of making outlandish offers. I'm in the business of sending out what we call fair offers and then working the lead once they're in our CRM. I see some folks that want to send out offers at 10%, 20%, 25% of market value. I think that's foolish. And I'm sure some people can pull it off. But I'd rather make a fair offer on a good piece of land and then negotiate and work through once we have that lead in our CRM. So most of our deals are kind of in that 25, 35K, 40K bracket for the actual sales price. Utilize JV funding. So you'll see 80-20 splits. That's what all of our members use. So call it $12,000 of gross profit to operator. Now I need to preface, that's not net profit, right? There's still operating expenses on top of that. If we want to look at net profit, I mean, it's difficult to say a new land business won't have many expenses. 80%, 85% of that 12K should be net. And as you build a team, that might go down a little bit. So we're just gonna say $12,000 gross profit. We can kind of look at the final number here in a second. So to hit our six-figure mark, and I'm not just budgeting for low six figures, I'm budgeting for something that's a little healthier than 100K, right? I want to really make sure that we don't miss the mark. If I go tell you to go shoot for 100K, maybe you hit 80 or 90. And I didn't really do a good job here. We're going to add a nice buffer to ensure that we're getting well past the 100K mark. So we say, hey, send out at least 5,000 letters per month. You should be yielding a deal for every 2,000 to 2,500 letters. Now we're using 2,500 as our math here. Why is that? Well, two things. When you're first starting out, you're probably not very good at picking markets. You're probably not very good at pricing offers. And more importantly, you're probably not very good at acquisitions. Those three things will dictate or start to help change that yield in your favor, right? And so we'll still start to see you need to send less mail to get a deal done. The more refined your acquisition process is, the better you are at crafting offers. So for every single, every month that we're sending out 5,000 letters, you're going to shake out to getting about 15 to 30 leads per month. Every lead, in our opinion, to get this kind of yield needs at least 15 manual touches to get a connect. One of the things that we're always combating is that people think, okay, I sent out 5,000 letters, I got 30 leads, I called them all up. Some say yes, some say no. It's actually not the case. One of the things that we're working against is people don't answer the phone. They don't respond to us. As we see a lot of new land investors dropping the ball too early on a lead when they haven't been able to connect yet. So to maximize our yield, we need to ensure that we are really working the heck out of these leads. We found that 15 manual touches for each lead to connect and then moving to an automated messaging sequence is a pretty dang safe bet. And this is why as that lead number starts to creep up and you're sending 10,000, 15,000 letters a month, it becomes paramount to have an acquisition manager, because there's no way that you as the operator, as the land investor, will be able to maintain that. Now, with 15 to 30 leads, you should be able to work this. It's going to be work though, keyword, work. That should equate to about 2 deals that you're acquiring per month. So it's going to translate to 24 deals in a 12-month period with $288,000 of pipeline profit. Now, here's some expectations. I'm going to say about 2/3 of those deals are going to sell before the 12-month end. Now, when it comes to turn times, I'm actually pretty conservative. I come from the day and age of when I used to feel like an old person back in my day, but back when I got started in this business, one, because it was a different time, but also I just didn't know what I didn't know. Like I was just buying properties on the sides of cliffs, buying landlocked deals. I was buying a lot of junk. My average turn time was probably close to 100 days. Now, when we look at LEA members, we got folks that are selling their first property in 15 days after locking it up, 20, 30, 40. And so there's a world where you sell all of that before year's end, and it really depends on how front loaded you kind of are with building that pipeline, right? You could slow roll it and do 5,000 mailers a month for those 12 months, or you might want to say, hey, I'm going to do 5,000 for the first month to figure out the system and to make sure I got my bearings, I know how to do it. And then you might scale up from there to build a pipeline, because there's such a latency in building a pipeline in this business. And the quicker we have those deals under contract, the more realistically we can get those turned around before year's end. But even with a 2/3 math, so $288,000, 2/3 of those deals translate to cash collected. That's going to be $191,000 in gross profit for cash collected. On top of that, you'll have about $90,000 or so in pipeline profit that might drop a few months thereafter, right? In the chat, let me know if you made $190,000 in the next 12 months with an extra $90,000 sitting in your pipeline without funding any of your own deals and just going through the action steps that we're about to outline in here in a second. Would that be valuable? Is that exciting or is that not very exciting? Let me know. I'll pull up the chat. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, like someone asked a dumb question. I know, I'm kind of being facetious. I think everyone's going to say yes. I would have been jumping up and down back in the day if that was a possibility. And so we're going to go through, all right, cool. Here's the KPIs. What are the skills required to actually get that done? So we're going to go through that here next. I want to hit home the fact that this might seem impressive. This might seem incredible. But for every single person on this call, I tell you what, this is so unbelievably attainable, right? We've got a gentleman, I don't know if he's on this call, Mr. Anthony Reese. He's been with us for coming up on, I think, a little over 60 days. His first 2 deals have gotten him about 2/3 of the way to this number in pipeline profit. First 2 deals. He's been in for 60 days. Brand new to land investing. He's a bartender, does not know diddly squat about land investing or real estate prior to this. Now, I will say, this guy was committed from the jump, and I could tell. I knew he was gonna figure it out. But you could certainly surpass this, and we've seen it done. And the best that I've seen in a year is about $400,000 in the first 12 months. And that was only with about 10,000 to 12,000 letters a month, not like sending out some massive quantity of mail. All right, skills required. So sometimes I say this so often that I almost start to annoy myself. So I hope I'm not annoying you guys with this, but I really just, for newer land investors, right? This is so important. It's so important. Now, when you're a couple years in, you can just get past this, right? You've got this down. It's not really the kind of key lever to be pulling on. But for newer folks, this is the top of your funnel, right? So we need to first learn to find counties with demand. The next, we need to break counties down into chunks with homogeneous pricing. I want you to over-index on market selection opposed to pricing. Where most land investors get themselves tripped up and where a lot of people throw in the towel is because they spend all of 5 minutes and 30 seconds in picking a market. They just go, oh, some other land investor is working in Costilla County. I want to do the same thing. And then they just don't know how to price it because they're taking a whole swath of a county and saying, how the heck am I going to do this? And A, they either just throw in the towel because they don't know how to figure it out, or they send out a bunch of junk offers that are mispriced. Maybe they do a deal, but more than likely they probably don't do a deal. And even if they do a deal, if they're in a market that's just not really going to move the needle in their business, so what? You went and made $4,000 on a deal. It's like, we want to really think about this in terms of inputs versus outputs. And so if we can put the time on the market selection and find markets with demand, it's going to make the selling of the property much easier. We're going to go after properties that actually can deliver the possibility of making multiple 5 figures in that deal. If you're going after deals that are worth 10 grand, there's almost no shot that you're going to make big money on that. You're literally just capped by the price point of those properties. So just by sliding up kind of the range of properties that you're going after areas that have demand, and then picking chunks where the pricing is clean, where the pricing is homogenous, that's going to make the pricing a lot easier. So you won't be spending oodles and oodles of time there. You'll spend more time on market selection than pricing. And then it's also going to make sure that your mailers are actually effective. Now, I say stay away from neutral letters. And it's not because I've got anything against neutral letters. I think actually in theory, you guys have heard me say this before, some of you, neutral letters might be the best option in the world. If you think about it, if you've got a big enough team that can pre-qualify leads, why would you not? I would just blast out neutral letters to the whole country because the pricing in some areas is just damn near impossible. We're building out this market selection newsletter right now. And so we're going through, we built a script that goes in and scrubs data from Redfin, plugs it into our filters for sell-through rate. And we found a little over, so far, TBD on this, a little over 1,000 counties that meet our metrics. So there's a lot of markets out there. So if you find yourself in a market where you simply can't price it, you can always move on. There's always other good markets out there. And so there are some markets that are just dang near impossible to price. Now, the reason I say stay away from neutral letters is because that pre-qualification happens internally. You're gonna get a bunch of leads that aren't qualified and you gotta pre-qualify them. If we're using a blind offer or even a range offer, that price is the pre-qualifier. It's not perfect, but it does a lot of the heavy lifting for us. So think about that as like your little salespeople going out there and pre-qualifying the leads for you. And if you've got other obligations and you've got a finite amount of time to put towards this business, well, those 15 or 30 leads that we talk to in a month that we're following up with 15 times or whatever it may be, they better be the right leads. They better be somewhat qualified to start. Now, as you build a team, you can start experimenting with this, right? We're really this year in our business building out our acquisition team and bringing more and more people on. And we're starting to see that we can actually facilitate neutral letters in certain situations. And I actually think there's certain price points where it makes more sense. It acts a little more like a letter of intent. It's a little more open-ended. It's a little weird if you get a blind offer on a $3 million property, right? It's kind of like a little off-putting, I think. So there's a time and a place for neutral letters, don't get me wrong. But for most newer folks, just focus on blind offers and range offers when you need to. Never lose sight of these two principles, right? The goal of pricing is to pre-qualify leads, not to be 100% accurate for the whole data set. We're trying to just be right enough, right? Right enough to where the lead calls us back and we know we're speaking the same language. And we're not trying to be right across the whole data set, just most of it. So most of our mailers are effective. You're never going to get it 100% perfect. For whatever reason, we get a lot of engineers that come into this business. They seem to love land investing. And they're so gosh darn analytical. And I love it on one hand, but it's also a detriment because they just can't let the thing go out there without being perfect. The goal of marketing is to get out there, do the heavy lifting for you and get a seller to call you back. That's really what we're shooting for. And hopefully they're qualified. Your first mailer should be viewed as a test. Understand that the best results come from remailing and implementing feedback from previous campaigns. This is a weird mindset shift, right? People think about, I sent a mailer, I should be saying what Sumner said, 2,000 letters, I get a deal, 2,500 letters, I get a deal. The truth is we're always dealing with incomplete fragmented information when we're pricing and building out offers. So our best results come from testing a market, getting feedback from that, and then iterating off of that. If you've done a good job with your market selection, odds are it's not a junk market. If you got crickets from your campaign, it probably means you just need to iterate on your pricing or the letter type or what have you. But if you've done a good job in the market selection, it's not about giving up and going and finding a new market. A lot of land investors are on this forever hamster wheel of finding new market after new market after new market. It's exhausting. It's also ineffective. Our best campaigns come from the fourth, fifth, sixth time that we've remailed a place. And at that point, we've got data that almost no one else has, especially if we've done deals there. We've got inside information. We've got the best data. And so we can make a lot better decisions off of that. And so that first mailer is a test. And then we have some philosophies around how we test markets with small sample sizes of mailers before you go sink a bunch of money into it. And one thing I want to touch on too, this is worth noting. This isn't super relevant to what we do in the land business, but I've got a lot of friends that are like super heavy into Facebook ads, right? They run Facebook ads for courses and for coaching and for all this stuff. I've got some of them that spend multiple six figures a month on Facebook ads. I've seen the back end of their ads manager on Facebook. It is literally identical to how I think about mailing. They go and set up 50 different ad creatives to 50 different audiences. They test. One or two of them hits. They redirect all the budget to the one or two that have hit. And they just double down on that. As essentially, in some way, we're doing a little bit of that, but to a much less extreme degree. And we have a much higher level of certainty with our mailers, right? I think Facebook ads, it's a little bit more of a numbers game in some cases. The next skill, acquisitions. So in my opinion, the real magic happens once the lead is in your CRM. The day and age of sending out a purchase agreement and getting a signed letter back and thinking that's the heavy lifting of this business, I think are over. And in fact, I just don't ever think they were really relevant. If you're going after big deals, it's a human to human interaction. And so the acquisitions process is really the backbone of our results. It's also how we get better yield from our mailers. I'm always thinking about things in terms of ROAS, right? How much money do I put into marketing? How much do I get back? That's going to dictate to a certain degree how fast I can grow my business. That and how much additional capital I have in my business. We'll talk about that here in a second. So the two things for acquisitions that I would just put out there as a word to the wise: speed to lead. So if you look at the metrics on inbound leads for almost any industry, Derek, I know you're on the call. Derek's got familiarity with inbound leads. Derek, it's paramount that you touch inbound leads quickly. Am I right? And you can unmute for a second to chime in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How many inbound leads do you think you've worked through in your sales career? Thousands?
Thousands.
And in any organization you've ever worked for, is that like not one of the backbone of their KPIs? Is how quickly can we touch that lead?
How quickly it dwindles down significantly over the first 15 minutes.
Crazy. 15 minutes, an hour, a day, a week. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And so you're throwing away money if we're not getting to these leads quickly. The way we do it in our business, there's an automated email and text that goes out that just says, hey, we're going to be calling you in 15 minutes. And the metric that we shoot for is 15 minutes to touch a lead. Do we miss it? For sure. But we really try to hit that. And that's one of the reasons that Pat Live is important for any land business, especially a land business where you've got other obligations, is they can be that first touch. Right? We are always working against the fact that one, sellers don't always pick up their phone when you're calling from a random number, and two, they don't trust us. What kind of business is it where you call them and they don't answer the phone? It's not a good look. And so that first touch through Pat Live and then quickly getting to the lead once they're in your system, super important. The next thing is thoroughly working leads until you connect. If you guys went and looked inside my CRM, it's almost either we don't know what we're doing or we do know what we're doing. I don't know. It's one of the two. It's absurd how many touches our leads have. It's unbelievable. We've got leads that we've been working for 8 months, 10 months, 12 months, and there's hundreds of communication points there. But that's how you get these big deals done, right? It's just a lot of back and forth, a lot of working through it with them. Focus on deals, not leads. What do I mean by that? So I see a lot of new land investors actually doing the inverse. They focus on leads, not deals. So when a lead comes in, you're going to get two kinds, if I had to generalize. You're going to get nice leads, you're going to get grumpy leads. I don't really care, and neither should you. What I want to focus on is, first off, yeah, they're going to have some intent to actually sell. But beyond that, is the deal something that we want to pursue, right? And the better you get at acquisitions, the easier it is to work through what we call red sellers. And those are tough sellers to work through. But those people do have motivation. Just because they're grumpy or they're grouchy or they don't always pick up the phone and they're curt with you does not mean that there's not motivation there. So you unearth the motivation, and then we say, is this even a deal that we want to chase? Because if it is, we will go through hell and high water to get that deal. So I see a lot of new land investors that are working on leads that are nice, that are friendly, that pick up the phone. But on the back end of it, the deal is not even anything special. New land investors, when I look through your CRM, I see a lot of deals and I'm like, that's a great property. Why are we not following up with that person? Oh, he was so mean, or he doesn't pick up the phone very often. And then we're chasing down these leads that are really friendly, but the deal's not very good. Two principles that I recommend internalizing. Price is not the only reason a seller decides to work with you. And not all land sellers are distressed. This is a weird one. If you come from the wholesaling world, like distress, some of the land sellers we work with are certainly distressed. Some of them just want to hit the easy button and move a very liquid asset, right? It's like saying everyone that has a garage sale is distressed. No, they're not. But if you have, a bike and a couch and a TV, sure, you could go try to move that liquid asset on Facebook Marketplace and maximize value, but that's annoying. Most people don't want to do that. They want to hit the easy button. A lot of sellers are in that same situation. The next thing is, it's not all about price. People, it's cliche, but it's like people want to sell to people they know, like, and trust. And so the more rapport we can build and the more that we can show them that we're the right player for them, the fact that we're actually going to take the deal to the finish line, I think that's really what makes or breaks the difference there in terms of getting deals done. And we just keep on showing up and we do what we say we're going to do. It's such a shocker in this business. The amount of letters that I get on deals that we own where I call the person back just to test them and they never pick up or never return the call is shocking. The bar is set so low in this business that if you just do a little bit more than most people, you almost have the whole market to yourself. It's unbelievable. Two kind of additional, unrelated, somewhat related points. Spend time outside of work learning sales and negotiation. I know that doesn't correlate directly to the land business, but I'm telling you, the better you and your team get at negotiation, the better things are going to become, right? Sales, I don't think sales per se applies to what we do. We're not selling. I think customer service is more at the heart of it. But what we take away from sales is the methodologies, the follow-up sequences, the tenacity, how, like what Derek was saying, speed to the lead, how thorough they are with working these leads. That's a sales approach. But we're not like twisting these people's arm to do a deal with us. You simply can't. And one of the things I recommend for you guys too is Chris Voss's masterclass on negotiating. We bought this for everyone on our team. Super cool. He does a lot of cool stuff around just kind of playing dumb and asking questions that really work, especially with tough sellers, right? They've got outlandish expectations. A lot of people, when a seller starts talking crazy, they just go along with it. And what we do is we push back in a very tactful way, and we do it through questions. And that's when Chris Voss really hits home on. So great class to take. The next area that we focus on as a skill when you're first getting started is funding. This is obvious, but capital is quite literally the lifeblood of any land business. You need a crap ton of money to run this business, right? Just in the first quarter of this year, which quite frankly was nothing special in our land business, like I think most people can attest to, things are a little bit slower than they once were. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. We spent over $1 million just on acquisitions. A lot of money. Like, I can't imagine funding all that and payroll and marketing and the system. Like, that's a lot of money. And so, like most businesses out there, there's an operator, there's a money person. That's how a lot of businesses are ran, especially businesses that require inventory or assets like we do, right? Now, when you're first getting started, I advise plugging in with a joint venture funding outfit. As a minimum, you should be getting at least 65-35. That's a bare minimum. I would accept nothing less. You've got the leverage, right? You've got the opportunity. Opportunities are not a dime a dozen, but capital certainly is. There's a lot of different ways to get your deals funded from a JV standpoint. There's a lot of people that want to fund your deals. So don't sacrifice the split there. You're going to have to give up some equity, but I'm a stickler about it. Inside the LEA program, everything starts at 80-20, right? I think that's a really fair place to start at. With that said, you don't want to be stuck in the JV arena indefinitely. This is a mistake that I made. Once I first started doing bigger deals, I just got lazy. We just JV'd everything. And we were spending $300,000, maybe $350,000 a year just on JV splits. It's a lot of money just to give to borrow someone's capital, right? As you build a track record and case studies, you can begin seeking capital partners. And you're like, how do I do that, Sumner? Simple answer is just a network, right? There's a lot of capital out there, but I would not recommend going and raising debt through a promissory note or doing a fund or doing, one-off promissory notes for a deal, whatever it may be, until you've got a track record. One, it's going to be easier to show that you know what you're doing to a potential funder, but also for your own sake. If you don't have a way to forecast and understand how this business works, do not take on debt, right? Just go the JV route. JV route is like, hey, they're taking the risk on you. They're also going to underwrite the deal probably more thoroughly than you will. I've seen behind the scenes a lot of these joint venture outfits. These guys go deep. Their due diligence is so unbelievable, much more thorough than most land investors. And they've got a bigger sample size. A lot of these outfits have done hundreds or thousands of deals. And so they can be a really good sounding board for you to use. So you're not just using them for their capital, you're also using them for their expertise, which is super powerful. One thing, I don't know if this is relevant to you guys, this was relevant to me. Do not hide what you're working on, right? Share it with the world. This will be done digitally and in person. I don't know why I was always either like timid to share what I was doing, or I don't know, I just didn't want to talk about it. I have no idea why that was. And it was a real detriment. Once I started sharing my stuff on YouTube and talking about it with friends and just being open about it, I had people starting to reach out to me to give me money. The dynamic totally changed. The cool thing about the land business is there's hardly anyone doing it. And so when you talk about it, people listen. If you went and said, yeah, I'm buying, B-class apartment buildings, it's like, yeah, dude, everyone and their mom's doing that. It's not that cool. The land business is so appealing. People are very fascinated by it. And so just get vulnerable, right? Talk about it. My first big funding partner came from a friend of a friend of a friend. And I had talked to one friend about it and word got out. And then he ended up being our biggest funder and still to this date funds a lot of our deals. And really, when I look back, was like a big growth factor for our business. And he also gelled really well with our business. That's one thing I will say about joint venture funders. Make sure that you guys work well together, because they're going to need to notarize documents, work with the title company. Like, they're going to have to do a lot of things in that process. And if they're slow or bad at communication, or you guys don't gel well, it can cause a lot of friction. So make sure it's someone that fits in with your culture and your organization. Most successful land businesses do not utilize just one funding option. Instead, they stack different funding solutions to cover all of their acquisition needs. So I'm going to share with you guys kind of a common capital stack that we see for LEA members. Joint venture funding, fund and grow. So this is a way to use 0% credit cards that you can wire that money into escrow through a service called Plastic. You can get up to about $250,000 of 0% interest money. It's a 2.9% processing fee. You also get credit card points and all of that, which is unbelievable. And we've got a link here. You guys can save $1,500 to get that set up. So what they do is they do all of the credit cards. They open all the credit cards with you. They go and negotiate the best rates. They do everything for you. And then in about 60 days or so, they say, here you go, here's the money, and you go and use it. Debt, so that could be long-term promissory notes or deal-based promissory notes. Bank financing, if the deal's large enough. Again, owner financing, if the deal's large enough. And double closing, which may still require transactional funding, just depends on where you're doing them. For new land investors, you guys can really use the 4 out of the 6. The only 2 that might be a little bit trickier is debt and bank financing. Number 4, you actually, if you go after a big enough deal and your financials are in order, you could still get bank financing. Debt might be a little bit trickier, and quite frankly, I'd probably shy most people away that don't have a track record for anything debt related. I think it's just too risky. All right, a massive opportunity. This is, I think, maybe an opinion that might be controversial, but this is what I've seen, and this is my opinion. So I'm going to share it with you guys because I think it's relevant. Bad times breed good people. Just like all commodity-based businesses, the land industry is cyclical. From 2020 through 2022, the land market went through an unparalleled spike in demand. Seriously, it was like unlike anything we've ever seen. It was bananas. And this was great for active investors. There was a dark side. There was a downside to this crazy surge in demand. With demand came new competition, which you guys can't see, new competition. And this was partly driven by the fact that the land business was a lot easier, but also people were sitting at home. They weren't working. They were watching YouTube videos. They were trying new things, taking courses. So there's just a lot of new folks that got involved during that time, right? And so while properties were easier to sell, dispositions was a little easier, acquisitions became a little bit trickier. There's just more competition for the same deals. So we've seen what I call many of these COVID hobbyist investors pack up their bags and leave over the last 6 months. This is driven by the fact that many of these land entrepreneurs never learned operational excellence. The getting was too good to bother building a business on sturdy foundation, right? There's just a lot of bad habits learned. And even me during that time, I learned bad habits. It was easy to get swayed and lulled into the fact that this is how the business was always going to be. It's not. If I rewind back to my origin story, pre-COVID craziness, which I'm grateful that I started prior to that, the business looked very much how it looks like today. And the business hasn't gotten worse per se, but relative to that crazy surge that we saw, yeah, relative to that, it is worse. But rewind the clock to days prior to that, it's not a whole heck of a lot different, right? And if you're operating off of the right playbook and you're aiming to have operational excellence, you'll do just fine. So for those just getting started now, you've got a few things on your side. One, acquisitions will typically become easier. Less competition, more motivation for owners. Now, what I will say, I'm going to preface, there is this weird in-between period, which I think we're starting to come out of. TBD on that. When the markets change and there's a seller-buyer dynamic, this is what happens. Sellers are grounded on what was going on a year ago, and they still want those prices. Oh, my property is worth $100,000, but even though the market's at 70, they're holding on to that $100,000 price point. Two, buyers are building out offers that are 6 months in the future, right? Buyers are including risk into their offer. They're underwriting at a much different rate, and they're saying, oh, that property that's at 70, I'll pay you 50. And so there's this weird disconnect where buyers want way lower than what the property is actually worth, and sellers want way more than what the property is actually worth. There's just this weird in-between period. I think we're starting to move out of that. But I think anyone that's been in the land business in a serious fashion can attest to the fact that Q4 was a very weird time in this business. Number two, this market environment will force you to learn sound habits. When we are back in the next boom cycle, you'll have a massive competitive edge. I really believe that. And we're going to talk about, I have some stuff to back that up as to why I think that's true. Now, for those just getting started, you've got a few things not on your side. Dispositions will typically become harder. This is why mastering your market selection is paramount currently. And number two, cash flow cycles will elongate, right? Deals will take 90 days to sell opposed to 30 days to sell, just as an example. So the dynamic has changed a little bit on that front. But if you're not grounding your expectations off of what happened a year ago, and you're kind of operating off of a sound philosophy, none of this should be shocking to you, right? This isn't rocket science. This is stuff that you should be doing in a good market or a bad market. I know a handful of land investors that were operating on a pretty big scale who have either pulled back their marketing, either entirely or close to entirely, and who have let go of all their team or part of their team, right? They've kind of had to reorganize things because there was bloat. People got fat and happy during the last couple of years. And there was a lot of bad habits built up during that time. And one of the interesting things about that is those investors are licking their wounds. They're scared. And so because of that, they're pulling back their marketing. What does that mean? Well, I think you can actually get a better yield from your marketing now than maybe when you could have when everyone was blasting out mailers and doing all this, right? Now, as a whole, the land business is going to continue to mature. So this is a blip on the radar. More people will come into the land business. You'll have to get more sophisticated. That's true. But the getting is still very, very good. But I think in the near term, the next year, 2, 3 years, whatever it may be, there is a real advantage for folks that are operating off the right playbook and that are willing to continue to market, to continue to play the game. And so I would say, if for the folks that are just starting now, you don't have that bad experience of Q4 that a lot of those investors did, where they're scared, they're licking their wounds. I think that's actually a real advantage that we can capitalize on. So if you look historically, it's kind of interesting. The best businesses are creating during downturns. This is like kind of across the board, like big behemoth businesses are typically created in recessions. I think there's probably a lot of reasons as to why that is. A couple of interesting things to note. If we look at 2008, some pretty monstrous businesses came out of it. There's just to name a few, but Venmo, Uber, Airbnb, WhatsApp, big businesses. I don't know necessarily why that is. I don't know if it's because people are getting laid off and they're starting to think about how they can reinvent their life, or there's just less competition out there, or maybe the marketplace is just more open to disruptive ideas. Who knows what it is? But I think that's true for all businesses. Now, we are not creating the next unicorn. We are not reinventing the wheel. But I actually think that there is a lot of power that can be had when building a business in downtimes. It's like, you know what, the best investors say, blood in the streets, blah, 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 blah. I think that relates very much so to what we're doing. Now, if you are going and looking just as a hypothetical, if you are going and underwriting your deals off of 2022 or 2021 prices, you could get yourself in serious hot water. So there's discretion needed here, right? But I do think there's a massive opportunity. And I am looking to continue to grow my land business, good time or bad time. Alex Hormozy said something really interesting, which I don't really remember exactly how he said it, but something along the lines of, the best entrepreneurs are not fazed by a downturn, right? You keep on chugging along, you follow your playbook, you follow your game plan, and you adapt where you need to. So we've been something kind of interesting, and some of you guys might have heard us talk about this earlier this week, and I want to touch on this here briefly. So I imagine there's many folks on this call who are coming into building on the six-figure land business 2023 and beyond, and potentially bigger than six figures, right? But we've got something kind of interesting that I want to share with you. what we call our LEA scholarships. Some of you guys might be familiar with this, but I want to touch on this here for a second. So I think this is one relevant to the group, and I haven't really had an open forum to discuss this. I think it's kind of cool. So what the heck is a scholarship? What is a scholar's origin story? So in the last year, you guys heard me say this earlier. I don't know the exact number. We probably talked to 250 land investors or so, and 100 of them have joined us inside the LEA program, our actual group coaching program. The trouble with that is it's expensive, and not everyone that's starting here has money to dedicate towards education. I certainly didn't. No way. I had $7,000. You kidding me? Every dollar was going to the School of Hard Knocks. And so I'm like, okay, there's two things that I want to solve here. One, there's people out there that have real tenacity that are going to pull this off. And I think we can help compress their timeline and compound their efforts. And it was like if you look back at me when I first started, there was no way I wasn't going to pull this off. I made it a non-negotiable with myself. But I spent 2 years of pain and hardship trying to figure it out on my own. And I let the market be my feedback loop, which is a slow and painful way to learn. And so there's a cohort of people, it's not everyone, but there's a cohort of people that have the chops and they just need the playbook for it. The other thing is, if you look at most course-based businesses, or really in the land business in particular, most people are selling information. I think that's bullshit, quite frankly. I want to sell outcomes, right? You win, we win. And so the way this works is we fund your deals, we partner on those deals with you, and the price of admission is whatever we make on those deals together, right? We are literally showing you the ropes, building your business together, funding your deals, and partnering on your deals. And this is directly inserts you into our LEA group coaching program, which is a 5-figure coaching program at this point in time. Inside this, so you save thousands of dollars on your land investing education through our LEA group coaching scholarship, get access to 100% JV funding for your deals, work intimately alongside the LEA team of coaches while scaling your business, join the fastest growing land investing community out there. We've only been around, it's pretty interesting, we've only been around since August 31st of 2022. And we've definitely kind of disrupted the space, if you will. And I think because at the core of it, we've touched on a need. There's folks out there that are tired of just going through a course which is static, which shows you outdated information and you got to learn in a vacuum. People want their hand held and they want you to have equal skin in the game. The incentives should be aligned. That's really what we're trying to optimize for here. Now, again, this is an intimate relationship. Like, this is working in tandem, in lockstep together. And so this is for folks that, one, we have rapport, trust, respect for, but also you're committed to this. This isn't something that you're putting one foot in, one foot out. One of the things that I hate the most when people are like, I'm going to do land investing as a side hustle. No, this is for folks that want to build a bona fide business, right? And if that's you, I advise submitting your application. We've already had about 5 folks join the scholarship in April. We did not make it public. There was just a few folks that we thought were good candidates for it. We're opening up 10 slots for the month of May. We released this earlier this week. I think it was on Tuesday. We already had 40 people schedule interviews for it. So if you guys want to submit your application and schedule an interview, you guys can do so here. It's landinvestor.co/scholarship. And I'll share that in the chat here in a minute. So now, I don't know, that was way longer than I expected. I'm always long-winded, so apologies. That was an hour of me rambling. Hopefully that was helpful. If it was, give me a thumbs up or something along those lines. Let's rip into some Q&A. Now for Q&A, no holds barred. If you guys want to talk about what we went through here, let's do it. If you guys want me to diagnose real problems in your business right now, let's do it. If you guys want to just shoot the breeze, I'm happy to do so. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and we can all riff together. Let me turn my camera back on. And if you guys want to raise your hand, there's a raise your hand button here. So raise your hand and I'll pick on you guys to go through this together. All right. All right. Who wants to go first? Who's the fearless one that wants to ask the first question? For whatever reason, Derek, it's on your face. Do you have a question? It looks like you got a question.
You know, I don't have a question as of yet. Really clear information, that you provided, over the last hour or so.
Yep.
But I'm sure something will come to me as people start to process and digest some of it.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll give you some time to think about it. Eric, I saw your hand go up. You got a question for us?
Hi, thank you so much for this great training. I really appreciate it. I'm on your Discord channel as well. Question.
Yep.
Is it okay to send out text messages in addition to the direct mailing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's something that we do in our business, we teach in our program. Most of our folks that are like 8 to 12 months in start stacking texting on top of it. The trouble with texting is that it looks a lot like a neutral letter, right? So there's a lot more pre-qualifying that goes in. When we look at how many people we have to touch to even get a lead in our CRM, it's a lot of work, right? And so there's two factors to that. One, you got to have someone to run that texting for you. That's work within itself. And then ideally someone to pre-qualify those leads. So usually what we tell people is once you have your acquisition manager and you've got consistent revenue coming in 20, 30, 40K a month, whatever it may be, at that point, I'd recommend bringing in a texting manager, which is a separate role, and having them run that cradle to grave. So the way we do it, we use launch control. Our text manager goes and aggregates the list for our mailings. They go and skip trace that list. They put it into launch control. They text everyone. Then we go and scrub that list. So anyone that didn't respond and anyone that had a bad number, then we will mail that list. So by doing this, we brought our direct mail cost way down and our lead cost and cost per contract down. But I think for most folks, like the people that I've seen that are brand spanking new to this business that don't have a team, I think it can be a bit of a shiny object. Now it's valuable. I just wouldn't do it off the start until you have a team.
Okay.
Yeah. The
Also,
other thing too, sorry, go ahead.
oh, just another quick question.
Yeah.
If you want to start out with just making capital right off the bat, would it be smart to do info lots just to have that small amount build up and then start bigger deals?
Yeah, it's a good question. So here's how I would frame it. If you have an infill lot, like an infill lead that comes to you, by no means do you have to shy away from it, right? And heck, if your thing is you're like, Sumner, I just like infill lots, then I would say go for it, right? I will say the process is different. The due diligence is different. The end users are different. I think in this market that we're in right now too, infill lots are so tied to new home construction. And most banks also aren't lending for, like, or they're not giving us favorable loans for construction loans to standard users. So new home builders aren't building as much. And like the standard folks that was going to buy the land and build their house, it's more difficult for them to get a loan. And so a lot of the infill lots that we've seen are just getting crushed. So I think from where we're at in the market cycle right now, I would be very weary of it. Now, if a lead comes to you, sure. But in terms of spending your hard-earned marketing dollars on it, I wouldn't. I get emails every week from people that say this exact line. They say, Sumner, I'm going to start land investing. I'm going to start with small deals first to pay my dues, and then I'm going to go bigger. There's actually no reason you need to do that, right? There's so many joint venture outfits that want to fund your deals that know probably infinitely more than you do right now about land. And so they will be the sounding board to say, yes, this is a good deal. No, this is a bad deal. They'll walk you through that process and you don't need any capital in the deal, right? The only capital you need is capital for marketing and data. So the costs are the same, whether we're going after infill lots or we're going after rural rec, the data cost, the marketing cost does not change. The only difference there is one of those deals can have a bigger outcome potentially. I think especially in this market too, I'd want to be really careful. We had a gentleman in our group, actually the first person to ever join the Leo program. His first deal was a buy for 500,000, sell for 950,000, partnered up with another member inside the program. I just don't think there's any reason that we have to go small. I heard a really cool quote on Clint Turner's Instagram, I think it was a week or two ago, and it said something that really resonated. And he said, there's never been a real estate deal that hasn't been done before, right? And what that means is you can go big out of the start and there's people here that will help you along that path.
Okay.
Like you never have to know the end game. You find the right partners, the right players, and they'll walk you through it. Even just being inside of our Discord, like if you landed a big old deal, even not being a member, like we will walk you through that process. No one's going to go with a deal and not figure out how to get it done. And then that's one thing I will say, this is somewhat unrelated. The land investing community is so good about that. Like the amount of support and how much people share is unlike most other industries. So my personal recommendation would just be sidestep it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
For sure. Yeah. And one thing too that I'm going to throw in there, and this is on the note of texting. I think a lot of people look at texting as like this super low cost, cheap option. It's not. Like we spend $5,000, $6,000 a month on texting. It's a lot of capital that still goes into it. And the thing is, like we burn through 20 or 30,000 pieces of data a month. So we need a lot of data to get enough leads to make it make sense. We got to skip trace that data, and then you got to have the support staff to qualify and work those leads. The playbook for newer investors is just, I would say, just stick with direct mail. The other thing about direct mail that I really like is that the KPIs are much more known. It's much easier to diagnose and fix your mailing process than it is your acquisition process. Acquisition is so much more skill-based. And so you could be getting a boatload of texting leads and not know how to handle those leads. There could be a huge disconnect there, which if you're picking the right markets, pricing them appropriately, and you pick up the phone for a seller, you'll get deals. It'd be much easier to get deals done. So that's my 2 cents on texting. But it is super powerful when the time's right. Yeah, what's up, Emilio? Emilio, I think you're muted, but I see your hand is up. Or maybe your audio is not working. Oh, it looks like I'm gonna ask you to unmute. So you went muted to unmuted. So how about now? Might be an issue with your audio. If you've got like a headset connected to your computer or something like that, something might be causing, yeah, audio's not working. If you want to submit your question in the chat, I can answer it there though. And in the interim, if anyone else wants to raise their hand, we can work through some questions for the group.
Hey, Sumner.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, long time no
How's it
see. I like the bandana.
Yeah.
Scarf.
Man, I've been working out in the garden. It's hot here.
Yeah.
I've got a course question, man.
Yeah.
So when you're calculating your sell-through rates in different markets, are you dividing like your specific acreage ranges for each sell-through rate divided by your overall sales in the market, like your 2 to 5 acre sell-through rate? Are you dividing what's currently for sale in that acreage range?
Yeah, it's a good question. So from a high level, when we're just going through markets, we're gonna look at the totality. So just give me like the unfiltered data, give me everything. But what we do is we have you actually see it's an attachment inside the course. We've got something called a monthly market deliverable. And inside there, we track all those markets. And then in there, we actually break the sell-through rate down for every acreage range. So that will give us the more kind of granular data. And you can make acquisition decisions or market decisions off of going after 5 to 10 acres because the sell-through rate's better there. But to even make it into that list, we're going to start top of funnel and just give me everything, right? So I see a lot of people, in my opinion, with the demand stuff, like over filtering too soon. And so I like to keep it clean and then we'll filter from there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right on.
Hey, I just out of curiosity, man, how's everything been in your business over the last, I think it's been probably 6 months since we saw each other.
I met you at Clint's thing. Pretty good, man. I mean, like we kind of started backwards. We started doing subdivides, and because we were both really busy dads and stuff, and so we could kind of run it with a lean, somewhat inefficient process.
Yeah.
Because we were doing low volume. So, we're trying to now implement higher volume, sort of mid-market flips to try and fill in the subdivide gaps, and building a small team around that. So it's made us realize all the inefficiencies. So, yeah, man, I've been loving all your content and stuff, and we've been implementing all your market research and stuff, man, in our business. So
thank you, man. I appreciate that. Well, hey, man, just staying alive. I think I don't know how it was for you, but Q4 I know was bumpy for a lot of people. That was like the when things really changed. I felt like. Yeah,
definitely a shift, man. So just trying to pivot, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it sounds like our businesses are pretty much similar. I mean, that's like right now it's bread and butter mid-market. That's our kind of month-to-month cash flow. We can always rely on that. We've also got our owner finance portfolio too. And then we're always working like that quarterly objective of one big subdivide, which has been kicking our ass. Very difficult, but it's been a fun journey. It's been like starting all over again.
Well, it looks like you just put together some subdivide numbers with that big flip you're doing, like splitting up into 250 acre parcels or something.
Yeah, so we've got 3 kind of irons in the fire. So we got one that we're closing on, supposed to be this week, knowing the title company probably next week. It's a 60 acre in Texas. We're taking it down just 6-10 acre lots. That's we're buying it for $285. I think it'll be worth $650 all said and done. That's a nice deal. It's in a great market. It's kind of in the hill country. And then we've got the one that I put in Discord, which is 352 acres. I'm having all sorts of problems with this damn easement road. Every week it's like, it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off. So that one's a little bit further out. And then the one that's probably more near term to closing is actually in the same county as the 350 acre one. It's 200 acres even, beautiful land right outside of San Antonio. Only trouble is we're taking it down to 20 10-acre lots. It's like a long rectangle. It's not skinny, but it's like the classic rectangle shape. So to maximize the number of lots, we gotta cut a road in. Well, this county requires you to pave the road. It's 5,000 feet of roads. We got a quote for $350,000 to pave the road. The number still pencil. It's just, quite frankly, is terrifying. Spend that much money on a road. So it's TBD on the exact contract price, but it looks like 650 to 700, 350 on the road, and then worth like 2.5, 2.8, somewhere around there. But these things, like the sales cycles, are just so long. There's so much emotional turmoil and ups and downs. So yeah, trying.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Thanks for all the content and encouragement.
For sure, man. Yeah. If there's anything we can ever help with, just find me in Discord, man. But good to see you. Happy you're on here. Emilio has a question. Saints on Sunday. He says, have you ever purchased land via tax deed sales? I have not. We actually had a guy come speak to the Leah group a couple months ago who did like 6 figures. First time in the land business, made 6 figures off like one tax auction. And that's his whole playbook. He just goes after tax auctions. You know, for me, I like putting my own destiny in my hands. Tax auctions, we don't have much control. One, on what the tax and what they're going to actually put up for auction, who's going to be at the auction. Some auctions are uber competitive, some are crickets. And it's like your acquisitions kind of pipeline is super lumpy. What's cool about any direct response business where we are pushing out marketing and we're getting inbound leads coming to us is we control our destiny. I want to go and do 10 deals next month, send out 20,000, 25,000 letters. I know it's going to happen. Will it happen exactly in a 30-day period? No, but I know what the outcome is going to be. We have a lot of consistency to our marketing numbers. I also, just from what I've seen, and every tax auction is different. What I've seen though is that the actual spreads on these deals is a lot tighter than what you typically find from the deals that we're doing, right? So you find stuff that's maybe 60, 70% of retail value, where we're at 50, 45, 55, somewhere in there. The other thing is that typically you're gonna have to quiet the title, which depends on what state you're in, but that's a hellish process unless the new buyer is cool with a quitclaim deed. But if you're selling a big old property on a quitclaim deed, people are gonna have some serious questions, and there's probably gonna be a discount involved, or you gotta quiet the title, which is, I've never quieted the title, but I reckon it's not fun. So I stay away from it. I certainly think it's something that you could bake in addition to what you're doing, but I would look at it very much so from the lens of an experiment. If you want consistency and you want a reliable land business, you've got to be going direct to owner for the marketing. Kyle, I think I saw your hand go up for a question and you just disappeared. I don't know if you left the chat. Kyle Martin, do you have a question?
I'm good.
Oh, maybe it wasn't
Appreciate
you.
it.
I don't know. I
Yeah,
thought I saw
just
someone
listening.
was there. All right, Derek, what's your question, man?
Yeah, I would say, you know, for a new investor just getting into it, first couple weeks out, would you? It's kind of a two-pronged question. Would you say kind of market selection is your first step there, kind of diving into that, and then with that, are you looking at data specific to the market you kind of land on, but also kind of with the economy that we're currently in, are you kind of looking at, hey, let's really be hyper specific on not only what the data shows on the land side, but also the economy in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, like sometimes I'm like, man, do I not know something that I'm missing here? And I very well could be. I don't really look at things from a macro perspective. I think real estate is so local. It's really just on the micro. And so if the numbers are telling us that there is real-time demand here, which we can see via comps, we can see via under contract metrics, that's people telling you that they're raising their hand and say they want to own land here, despite what the economy is doing, right? I also think on top of that, the assets that we go after, rural recreational, rural infill, I think those are just really sturdy assets. And like COVID was not a perfect representation of a downturn because things went crazy. But we saw when there was fear in the market, people flocked to tangible assets like 40 acres with trees, rivers on, like all that stuff. That stuff never goes out of style, in my opinion. Now, the infill lot, I think you would have to be a lot more mindful potentially to stuff that maybe is more macro on a state level. Like, are people actually going to keep on building here, right? So I think that you might have to do a little more forward looking. But for what we do, I think it's pretty damn sturdy. I also think that the numbers typically tell us whether we're going to work there or not. Now, to answer the first question, dude, the first 90 days is what I call no man's land when you're starting a land business. Pun intended. I actually never thought about that. All you're doing is doing work and getting nothing for it. You're just selecting markets, pricing mailers, and hopefully mailing. And through that process, every single county that we find that lines up with kind of our philosophy, that like, okay, it meets our sell-through rate standards, we're aggregating and adding it to a list, and we're documenting all of our findings. Because a good market has to be relative to something, right? So when I have a list, right, like I talked about earlier, what we're building out right now is a monthly market selection newsletter, where we built out a team of data analysts that go out every single month and aggregate the data for over 1,000 counties in the US that meet our sell-through rate metrics and break down all of the data between 1 to 2 acres, 2 to 3, like on and on and on, sell-through rate, supply levels, how many out-of-state owners there are, how much data there is there. And so when you get a list like that, whether you create it or you get it from the newsletter, like you can just take that and say, okay, the obvious winner here is this one. Boom, take that and just run with it. So I see a lot of folks that like They go through hours and hours of market selection, but they never document any of their findings. You got to have this to benchmark these markets up against each other. But in the beginning, it's like, dude, that's how almost all your time will be spent. And then let's say like the playbook that I tell people, like when a new person joins the LEAD program, this is how I say, you get your first deal in 90 days doing this, and you don't deviate from this. 2 weeks into the program, you selected your first market. You've had that reviewed by the coaches. 4 weeks, that mailer has been sent out for that market. So there's 2 weeks in between where you're pricing that mailer. You send that out. I'm conservative here, but let's call it 8 weeks. You get your first few leads coming back in. It's probably closer to 6, more realistically. 8 weeks in, you get your first few leads coming back in. Take those leads, you get them reviewed by the coaches. They say, no, yes to this one. We're going to do this one. We get that deal funded for you. That deal closes in 2 weeks. So at the 10-week mark, you got that deal. You've listed it. Some of them sell immediately. Some of them sell 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks later, whatever it may be. But most people actually compress that timeline. And that's how they get their first deal in 90 days, right? Most people come in, they're like, week 1, I got a market selected. Cool. Week 2, we're mailing it out. So you don't have to stick to that, but those kind of outline the action steps. But once the phone starts ringing, you will be divvying up your time between acquisitions and market selection. But you never want to let your foot off that market selection pedal. I see a lot of people doing that. You don't want to ever do that. So yeah, market selection is everything at the beginning. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. All right, come on. Someone's got to have questions for me. Any more? I see Spencer says, I know a lot of investors speak about the number of touches required to convert a lead. How many times are you marketing to the same leads to convert? Do you have a map for how you follow up with these leads you are interested in marketing to over and over again? Yeah, so Spencer, a couple of different things to add to that. It's a great question. So first off, on our last market selection webinar, we gave you guys our Google My Map strategy. It's a module out of the program. So we document stuff on Google My Map. So it'll show the comps on there. It'll also show the data from data tree. And so you could track all that stuff visually on there. But once a lead is inside of our system, so it's inside of our CRM, to get a hold of them, it'll be 15 manual touches. That's usually spaced out over 2 weeks, right? And so that cycle can kind of break a little bit if they're playing phone tag. We're not robots, so we'll read the context of what's going on. But if we get radio silence, it'll be 15 manual touches, a blend of calls, email, text, with the majority being calls. And then we'll add them to an automated follow-up sequence. And then they'll get manual follow-ups about once a quarter from our team. In terms of remailing, we do a lot of remailing. We typically pull leads that we've already contacted off of our remail because we already have them in our CRM. So why are we going to remail them? Now, there are situations though, where we know this happens quite a bit. Okay, we get a lead that calls in from a letter. It's a great deal. The lead says, yeah, I want to sell. We're good to go. Cool. And then we never hear from them again. We're like, what the heck? And we text them, we email them, we call them, we try everything. And then our last step is we send the carrier pigeon out and we send them like a handwritten letter. So we will do follow-ups through direct mail. We don't actually handwrite it. It's a service that does it for us. We will do that through direct mail, but it won't happen in our typical sequence where we're sending out the blind offers. That's a little bit of a different process. For me, it's like once we have that data in our CRM of that person's info, why would we need to mail them again? We're just going to keep on working them. So first 15 touches till we get a hold of them. Once you get a hold of them, that system breaks again. It's just all about context, about how to navigate that conversation. If we don't get a hold of them, we put them on an automated sequence and they get followed up with once a quarter. What CRM do you find most useful? I'd say Follow Up Boss or Pebble, either or. They do a lot of the same things. Pebble is a little more geared to land investors. Follow Up Boss is more for like real estate agents. They do a lot of the same things. For me, they've got to have a really good way to track the KPIs for our acquisition team and dispo team. This is like a sales business, right? So we need the sales KPIs, and the KPIs we really lean on are the communication metrics. So I see some people using a CRM and they're using Google Voice for the calling and a different service for the texting, and they're emailing out of Gmail. It's so discombobulated, it's so hard to track all of that. So you need a CRM that houses that all in one area. So both of those do that really nicely. And yeah, it's pretty much all we look at. One of the things I've learned about CRMs is, I guess most things in life too, simple wins. Simple, 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 right? Do what you can adhere to and what your team can adhere to. So a CRM that you know how to navigate and your team knows how to navigate does well. Also, the systems that you build into that, people like to get so fancy, but no one adheres to it. So build something that is actually practical to use in terms of stages for leads, follow-ups, automations, like make it simple. But either one of those CRMs are great options. I'm going to pick on Mr. Tim Ebby. Tim, are you here? What's up, Tim? Are you at a coffee shop?
Yeah, what's up? Now I'm at a swim school myself.
Okay, cool. You got you got a few minutes to talk?
Yeah, sure. I'll
Okay,
my
cool,
best.
man. So I know you're doing volume. You're very active in your business. I'm curious, how many touches are you giving leads for sellers when they come into your CRM to get a hold of them?
Right now what we're doing is if we get a missed call, we try to call 3 straight times back. We learned that from Dennis, right?
Yeah.
Initially, right? If they don't answer, we'll probably follow up about 3 days, right? After that, we'll move them to like a 30-day follow-up bucket.
Okay. So that's
Because a lot of the stuff we're doing is blind offers, right?
Yeah. Tim brings up a really good point, and this is something that I just recently learned. We just recently implemented. We do a double dial. Our sales trainer inside the program, Dennis, actually recommends a triple dial. And so when you get a lead in, call them back to back. So if they have do not disturb on, if you call them 3 times, it'll cut through that do not disturb and actually ring the phone. The other thing is people think there's something really urgent going on. So it's a little bit annoying, you would think, but sellers don't seem to bring it up, and we just don't bring it up at all. So yeah, Robert says triple dial is a new double dial. He's probably right. It's a really cool strategy, and our pickup rate's much higher because of it. Brian and Erica, give me 1 second. I got someone knocking on my door. I know this is bad radio or bad video here. I'll be right back in 2 seconds. All right. Apologies about that, guys. We had someone Uber Eats or DoorDash, whatever. All right, Brian, you're up, and then Erica will go next.
Hey, Sumner, appreciate all the content you put out.
Yeah, for sure, man.
And watch every YouTube video you put out, and watched a lot of other land investors, and you're by far the best content by far.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
A couple questions. One is, I was just funding my own deals, but as you said, you can't scale that amount of money, and I'm sitting on these deals, and the next one they're coming up. And so what's your, like, you have a nationwide company that you would recommend to use, like, for a backup plan? Like, I have some private money, but that's going to run out too. Or what's your best option as far as like a backup if you have a deal that you need to get closed?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, you're in the woes, man. It's tough when you're funding things, you've got great opportunities, you want to keep on scaling your marketing. So if you want to send me an email after this, I'll put my email in the chat. I can get you set up with something that I think will be helpful. I think from just a broader perspective, though, and this is what I talked about earlier in the slides, really making it a priority to ensure that you've got multiple funding options at any time, right? So, and these might not always be the best funding options, but at least you can fill in the gaps, right? So you might have some private money available to you. Keep on working those relationships. Even with private money, though, what I've learned is like people give us 300, 400 grand, whatever, maybe you can fly through that in a month. And then you got to wait 60, 90, 120 days, whatever it is. And so we are always like sticking in these different little funding options to make everything work. The two that I'd recommend is just have some good JVers in your back pocket. I'll set you up with something that I think will be helpful on that front. And then fund and grow is a really interesting one. I don't see really anyone talking about it. I would say probably a quarter of our members are using it right now. You're gonna have an LLC that's been seasoned for 3 months, I think something along those lines. If you have a brand spanking new LLC, you should be able to get like 50 grand to 100 grand. If you're seasoned, you get like 250 grand. And you can just recycle that over and over and over again. So that can become a lot in this business. So there are two great avenues that you can utilize. There's also, they can be hard to find, but there are people out there, whether they're land investors, or ideally I like finding people that are in like kind of adjacent real estate strategies. So fix and flippers, wholesalers, buy and hold rental people that know how the real estate works and know how to underwrite a deal. What we've done with a lot of those people is we've done one-off deal promissory notes, right? So what we'll do is we'll say, here's this deal, we'll underwrite it together. They'll give us 95% loan to value, whatever it may be. For example, we just funded a subdivided this way. That 60 acre I was talking about. We got 92% loan to value. We paid 5 points on the money immediately. And then we have 12 months with the capital at 12% interest. And so I would just start networking in Facebook groups, real estate meetups, RIA meetups, whatever it is, and find people like that. The trouble with finding other land investors to fund your deals, there's plenty of people that will. And if you ever get in a pinch, throw it in Discord. Like there's people with money that will fund your deals, but these people, they're jaded. They know good returns, and so they're going to want something pretty fat. But that's always a worst case. Hail Mary, you will always be able to find 50-50 capital in this business. I just think there's ways that if you're proactive, we can avoid that entirely. So send me an email. I'll give you 2 resources that I think will be helpful.
Okay, cool. Yeah, definitely do that. Yeah, because I think, like you said, better off going outside of the land investing, because most of the land investors know if they HAV, they can get at least 20%. You can at least find hard money, like pay the points, and 12% interest is way better than 20%.
Yeah, for sure. And it sounds like you're doing deals. So like, you've got a good read on things. I say for newer folks, like avoid the debt stuff, hard money stuff, but it sounds like you're doing volume. Can you shed a little bit of light where you're at in your land business?
Yeah, well, a little bit. I had been in real estate for like 5 years, so just started with land investing in January. Have 1 deal sold or bought and sold, and then have 2 others that I purchased. Now just I'm listing everything just with real estate agents. That way I don't have to worry about the dispositions. So now I'm kind of running out of capital, and still sending out mailers, but I need to get a backup plan if these mailers come back.
Yeah. Dude, well, kudos on you for taking action. Already doing deals, 5 months in is certainly impressive. Outside of the capital stuff, is there any real-time issues I can help kind of work through with you right now?
The biggest thing that I've been having a little problem with as far as pricing, which that's kind of irrelevant to a certain extent, like you want to get them on the phone.
Yeah.
But is like, it's hard to price. Like I was like when I started, I was just going off the numbers, 3 months sold, and kind of basing on a percentage, depending what state, percentage change. But as far as like now, the data is a little bit screwy because of the market's going down. So you go 3 months back and you get, well, this property sold for this much, and now it might not sell for that. So it's how much are you just putting your percentage down, or how are you adjusting for your pricing?
Yeah.
With changing?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So I always tell people, like, when we are, I guess for every component of this business, because there's no good, and this is why there's an opportunity here, right? Because there's no good central database, a source of truth, and all the data is fragmented, creates inefficiencies in the market. That's why we can buy deals at 100 grand, sell for 200 grand. Like, it works in our favor. The counterpoint to that, though, is that we have to extrapolate a lot of different data points to create a complete picture from different sources. So a couple of things that we do. One, you can certainly apply a discount rate. I think 10 to 15% is pretty fair. So if something's sold at 100, maybe it'll sell at 90 or 85 now. That's what you might underwrite your exit price at. So you'll base your offer percentage off of that. In some cases, that can be too aggressive, and I think context is important. So we'll always look at those comps. What was the days on market? So if a thing got listed and moved to 2 days, I'm going to assume that's pretty damn relevant if it was a couple months ago. I don't think the market changes that fast. But if price drop up for 6 months, okay, it's probably not a reliable number really in any market, right? The next thing is we'll go look at how much supply there is in that market. We'll go look at how long that's been sitting up there for. And then we'll always go and look at under contract, both on Land Watch and or land.com now, and then Redfin. Those are what you'll get you'll see two different things there for what the data that you see. I think that's the best real-time pulse that you can get in a lot of cases. And so we'll kind of blend all of that together to make sense of it. But at the core of it, even if you're pricing your offers off of bad data or old data, you can always react to that once you have the lead inbound. And so in some cases, it almost works at your interest to price off of 3 months for your offer, because you're going to get more leads coming in, and then stair step them down if you have to. I see a lot of people that are just, like, especially when they're first getting started, they're just too damn aggressive on their offer pricing. If you're going after mid-market stuff, I would almost rather be at 55 or 60% of market to get those leads coming in, because I know that's when the magic happens. So I wouldn't get too hung up on it on the pricing side. It's just when you underwrite the deals, then we're sticklers. We're calling up the realtors. We're looking at the last sale price. We're looking at everything. But those are some of the things that we look at. It's certainly market dependent, though. Certainly market dependent. There's some markets that have appreciated 2% or more in the last year. There's some, Kyle was just doing a data analysis on a market in Washington that depreciated 65% last year. So it's all over the map. It's definitely specific.
Yeah. I definitely learned the hard way on my first mailer. I listened to one guy was saying 25% on the offer that I sent a county in Florida.
Yeah.
I think I sent 1,000 mailers, did not get one reply. So it's like after that, I bumped my offer up quite a bit, and trying to do that more, getting you, renegotiate when it gets back if it's too high.
Yeah. I think you got the right playbook there. I don't know why people are still preaching such outdated information. It beats me. But yeah, dude, good questions, and Godspeed on your business, man. Send me an email and I can get you set up with the JV funding.
Will do. Appreciate it, man.
For sure. All right, Erica, another question. What you got?
As starting out, would it be a good idea to partner with a realtor if you have a target market, let's say in a certain county? That way they can help take pictures, find a buyer for you, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, your head's in the right place. And I've made a lot of personal changes here and changed a lot of personal beliefs around this. I used to be so anti-realtor. They were the bane of my existence. And I've realized that realtors come in all different shapes and sizes, and they vary in quality. If you can find a good realtor, they are an A player. They are such a big asset to your business. They're an asset in two ways. They're an asset on the disposition side, especially when you don't have a team yet. It's almost easier to contract that out to them, opposed to having someone internal on your team that you have to pay payroll on. So the disposition side is great. They can, even if they're a good realtor, they can actually make the disposition process better. They'll walk the property. We've got a guy right now that takes a quad out and drives people on the properties. Like, that stuff is amazing. They're not easy to find, but if you find one, they're gold. The other thing is, great realtors will have pocket buyers. So if they are an amazing land realtor that owns a market, they will have buyers lined up for you. There's a lot of value on that front. The other side of things is on the market research. So once you start getting integrated with a good realtor, they'll say, hey, Erica, go buy land at this corner of the county, buy it at 5,000 an acre, and I know we can sell it at 12,000 an acre. So they can take a lot of the guesswork out of the market research stuff. So yeah, partnering with a realtor is not a bad idea at all. Something that we've started to do more and more, especially for some of our bigger projects. We've got a realtor right now in Texas who's working 2 subdivides for us. He's going to the county for us. He's getting us the road people. He's doing everything for us. And so the 10% that we pay him is a commission well earned, What I will say is they're really difficult to find. So you got to be very, very picky. You see a lot of people listing lands that the only reason they're listing land is because they can't get any leads for houses because they're a crappy realtor. And then they get land leads and they list them, right? And you're like, oh, well, that's the first person that came up. We'll call them. So what we do, there's 2 things you can do. You can use Land Watch to find land realtors. So there's specific brokerages and realtors that just do land. Those are great people to work with. They're not all amazing, but you're at least shooting in the right direction. Or we actually have a YouTube video on the channel. It's one of our old coaching calls where we go through and show you how to use Xome. It's Xome. And that will show you who's selling the most lands for realtors in the market. And so you just start calling those people up. But I would just say be very, very choosy with who you select. But yeah, it can be super powerful. And I see a lot of people inside the group that don't want a team or aren't ready for a team that sell everything through realtors.
And what do you recommend as far as the commission?
Yeah, it ranges. It totally ranges. It depends on how expensive the property is, how much work they're doing for you, what the relationship's going to look like on an ongoing basis. Anywhere between 5 and 10% is pretty typical. Like for a guy in Texas, I think that guy's worth every dollar at 10%. I think 5 to 7 is probably where I'd peg most people starting out if they're just like your standard realtor. So somewhere in that range. And now if it's like a super duper cheap property, you might have to give them more because it's not worth their time. But if it's
Right.
a $500,000 property, they might be happy with 5 points, right? It's a lot of money.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So we said when you don't see any comps nearby, how do you determine pricing? Yep. Go back further in time. Is something that Kyle's been working through with us for the last couple of weeks. Sometimes you got to go way back and you got to apply a discount rate to that old data. You can also go look at last sale prices for the adjacent lots or for the lot you're looking at. You can kind of use that as some kind of expectation setting. I will say you got to be really careful in understanding, are you looking at a last sale price from 2007? Probably pretty different than the last sale price in 2004. So you do have to understand where the land market was at that time. But essentially going back in time is the best you got. We also use a lot of realtors for giving us evaluations. Sometimes they don't want to do it, but you can typically find someone to do it for you. Any more questions, guys? Appreciate everyone being on here. I know everyone in the Leah group, in 20 minutes, we got our acquisition sales training call. So you guys, this is actually pretty interesting to talk about. So in March, we added a new call. It's our acquisition sales training call. So the 2 roadblocks that we see for new land investors is market research and acquisitions. So we doubled down on that in the first 6 months. Like we want to make you a pro at that. And what we do is we actually go and get leads out of my CRM. We do PPC to get leads, and we give you guys leads on those calls to call in real time. And we have a sales trainer that walks you through how to structure those deals. If you land a deal, you get compensation on the deal too. It's either $1,000 per contract or 15% of the gross profit if you want to wait it out. So that call is coming up here at 4. So any more questions here, guys? Anything that you guys want to throw in while we're all here? Appreciate everyone making the time. I know we ran pretty long here. Lots of new faces too. I think we're going to start getting on a schedule of doing 2 of these calls a month. So if you guys enjoy these, if you guys are on our email list and Discord, you guys will get updated. If not, you will.
I have a quick question if you have a minute.
Yeah, for sure, Sharon. Yeah, what's up?
So when you said the goal of pricing is to pre-qualify leads.
Yep.
When you say pre-qualify a lead, what do you mean exactly? Are you just trying to make sure you're maximizing what you could potentially get from that property? What do you mean?
Good question. Yeah. This is something that you definitely don't want to miss. So this is a great question. So when we say pre-qualified, there's 2 things that we're trying to shoot for here, right? What I tell people is we're trying to make sure we're speaking the same language with the seller. So if you've got, hey, I can only put out 20 hours a week into my land business right now, whatever the number is, we want to make sure that when you're talking to someone, it's shots on goal. Like you're talking to someone where the interests are aligned. And so the way we get the interests aligned is we offered a price where we're in the realm of being reasonable of what we would actually want to buy it for. And they're speaking the same language where they actually might want to sell at that price. So if we just sent out a letter with no price, we get people all the time. They're like, oh, I just want to, get the value on my land, or I want 120% of retail, or like you just get a bunch of tire kickers. And so if we were just sending out neutral letters, we field all these calls that aren't worthwhile. And so when we look at sending out blind offers, maybe 0.05% of the people actually call you back. But we know if we priced it right, we're in the realm of being reasonable. The other thing is when we look at renegotiation, which the vast majority of our deals get renegotiated, if we send out an offer at 50 and we have to be at 40, much easier to get them down to 40. But if we misprice and we need to get them down to 25, it's a really difficult thing to do. So we're just trying to be in the realm of being reasonable for both parties. So
Okay.
you can either have your team do that when a lead comes in and they pre-qualify them, or you have the letter do that for you.
And is that more geared toward blind offers, really? I mean, as opposed to neutral letters?
Yeah. I mean, like you could do pre-qualification neutral letters. You could say, only sell to me if you want to sell at a discount, or no retail price. I mean, you could say something silly like that, but price really leads the way. So with a blind offer or range offer, you're going to lead the way. The other thing that I like with a blind offer is that we can include a purchase agreement. Now that purchase agreement isn't so much so to get them to sign right then and there, but it's to show that we mean business. So there's real intent with what we're looking to do here. And so I think you get people that are just a little more motivated. The response rate for neutral letters is way higher, but there's so much human work to sift through them.
Yeah. Okay. That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good stuff, guys. Appreciate everyone making the time. Bridget, we're going to be sending out the recording to everyone. I'll also be sending out the PowerPoint presentation as well, so you guys will have that. And if you guys want to submit your application, I put that in the chat too, landinvestor.co/scholarship. Good seeing you guys. We'll do another one of these here soon. Everyone take care of yourself. All right. Bye guys.